You feel it before you name it. That sudden grip in your chest when the unknown shows its face. Maybe it's a decision you've been avoiding, a conversation you can't seem to start, or a risk that asks more of you than comfort ever could. Fear doesn't always scream, it whispers. And yet, that whisper shapes your path more than you'd like to admit. But what if that tension isn't a sign to stop, but an invitation to begin? You notice it most when things get quiet. You're standing in the kitchen, phone in your hand, hovering over the send button. Or maybe it's just after you say you'll finally take the leap, move cities, change jobs, start something new, and suddenly, it feels like something inside you recoils. Not physically, but in a way that's hard to explain. That's fear, but not the fear of falling off a cliff or facing a wild animal. No, this one's sneakier, more subtle. It's the fear of uncertainty, of visibility, of being seen trying. Bruce Lee understood this fear well, but he didn't see it as a flaw in character. He saw it as part of being human. He once said that fear is like a flame. It can either warm you or burn you, depending on how you relate to it. So instead of trying to douse the fire completely, he learned to work with the heat. You might not be dodging punches in a sparring ring, but you are stepping into moments where fear shows up in disguise. That awkward silence in a meeting before you speak up. The pause before you hit apply on a role you're not sure you're qualified for. The hesitation when love, or ambition, or loss knocks on the door. Your first step isn't to eliminate fear. It's to recognize how it moves through you. Pay attention to how it feels. The way your shoulders tighten, the shallowness of your breath, the quick scan your mind runs through to find an escape route. And here's the insight Bruce practiced in his own way. The body often reacts to perceived threat just as it would to real danger. But perception is trainable. So the first invitation is simple. Catch it in the act. The next time fear shows up, name it. Not with shame, not with pressure, just curiosity. Oh, this is fear. You're not trying to fix it. Just greet it like a familiar character in a long-running story. One you don't have to banish, just understand. There's a big difference between fear that protects you and fear that controls you. The former keeps you from walking into traffic. The latter keeps you from walking into your own potential. Here's a practical experiment. Think of one decision, small or large, that's been quietly lingering in the back of your mind. Something you haven't taken action on, but wish you could. Don't act on it yet. Just sit with it for a moment. Ask, what am I really afraid of? Write the answer down. Not in your head, physically write it. You might be surprised by what it actually is. Rejection, judgment, change, loss of control. These are legitimate. But they're not facts, they're forecasts. And forecasts can change. Now, imagine a version of you, 3 months from now, who made the choice, who followed through. How does that version walk? How do they breathe? How do they look at fear, not as a warning, but as a signpost? This is the threshold, the edge between comfort and growth. Bruce Lee didn't wait to feel fearless before stepping forward. He moved anyway. He understood that the difference between fear and power is often just one conscious breath, one unshaky decision, one lean into discomfort. And you don't have to do it all today. You just have to stop pretending that fear is a stop sign. It's not. It's a signal. One that says, you're approaching something important, something that matters. You can feel the difference, can't you? You don't notice how much you're forcing things until you finally let go, until you stop clenching, stop bracing, stop trying to push your way through every barrier like fear is something to be smashed. You were taught that control equals power, that stillness equals failure, that to move forward, you must dominate the chaos. But Bruce Lee saw through that illusion. He knew force without flow only leads to more tension. You hear his words in your head. Be like water. Not as a metaphor to sound enlightened, but as a practice. Water doesn't avoid the obstacle. It doesn't get paralyzed by fear. It moves with the shape of things. Around rocks, over walls, through cracks. It adapts. And in doing so, it never loses itself. So now, you ask, where in your life are you rigid? Where do you keep hitting the same wall, telling yourself that if you just try harder, grip tighter, push longer, you'll finally break through? Maybe it's the way you shut down when conversations get uncomfortable, or the way you overplan instead of starting, or how you keep waiting to feel ready, like readiness is something that gets mailed to your doorstep. That's not flow. That's fear in disguise. The fear of getting it wrong, of being exposed, of being vulnerable. But look closer. Water never fears being wrong. It simply moves. It doesn't judge itself for the shape it takes. It just responds to what is, not what should be. Try this. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine one area in your life that feels heavy, stuck, or tense. Don't solve it, just see it. Now, picture that energy as a current, not a wall. Imagine yourself, not fighting it, but stepping into it, not resisting, but letting yourself be guided by what's already moving. You're not giving up. You're giving in to movement, to responsiveness, to your own intuitive rhythm. That's not weakness. That's alignment. Bruce Lee didn't avoid conflict. He trained to enter it with clarity and adaptability. He practiced until reaction became instinct, until fear had no time to settle. And what made him lethal wasn't his strength. It was his timing, his looseness, his ability to shift between stillness and movement in a blink. That same principle applies here. When fear tightens its grip, you loosen yours. When the pressure builds, you soften your stance. You find the space inside the moment, instead of running from it. Here's a simple reflection to explore. Where in your life are you pushing when you could be flowing? Maybe it's not about doing more, but listening deeper. Maybe the breakthrough comes when you stop breaking yourself against something unmovable, and instead, move around it. It's not easy. You've been conditioned to equate effort with value. But notice, some of the most meaningful shifts in your life came not through force, but surrender. The conversation you didn't script, the opportunity you didn't chase, the moment you paused long enough to see something you would have missed. And fear? It doesn't like that pause. It thrives on panic, rush, overcorrection. But when you become like water, fear has nothing to grab onto. You become slippery, fluid, harder to pin down by doubt. You gain momentum, not from speed, but from continuity. This isn't a performance. It's a way of living. Bruce Lee lived it every time he stepped into the unknown with trust in his training, in his instincts, in the intelligence of movement. You can do the same, not by faking confidence, but by feeling for what's real in the moment. Let fear show up, then shift, soften, move. Like water. You don't fight the form. You flow right through it. There's a story you keep telling yourself, that if you were truly ready, the fear would be gone. That courage means certainty. But Bruce Lee knew otherwise. He didn't train to erase fear. He trained to work through it, not by avoiding it, by rehearsing it, over and over in ways that mirrored the real thing. So when fear showed up in the ring, or in life, it didn't freeze him. It focused him. You don't need a wooden dummy or a training hall. Your life is the dojo. Every conversation you avoid, every challenge you sidestep, every feeling of "I can't" is a drill waiting to happen. And you're not failing because you feel fear. You're just untrained in moving with it. Think about this. Fear isn't a verdict. It's a spike, a momentary surge in uncertainty. But if you've never stayed long enough to see what happens after that spike, you've only practiced avoidance. And what you practice, you reinforce. So, what if today, instead of running from the tension, you trained with it? Start small. That's how Bruce built his speed, through micro movements, repeated until instinct took over. You don't face your biggest fear first. You face the next smallest one. Maybe it's introducing yourself in that meeting. Maybe it's showing someone your draft instead of polishing it forever. Maybe it's turning off the script in your head and letting silence be part of the moment. You're not here to conquer fear. You're here to condition your nervous system to stay with it. That's training. That's the fear drill. Try this. Pick one thing that triggers discomfort. Not panic, just resistance. Something that sits at a 3 or 4 on a scale of 10. Now, set a timer for 2 minutes. Expose yourself to that discomfort. On purpose. Write the scary email. Stand on camera. Share the idea. Stay in it for the full time. Don't rescue yourself early. Then breathe. Journal what happened. What rose up? What surprised you? You'll likely find that the fear didn't grow, it plateaued. And in the absence of avoidance, something else showed up. Agency. This is how Bruce rewired his fear response. Not by brute force, but by repeated exposure to controlled difficulty. Fear doesn't get the final word when repetition teaches your body that it can stay open, even under pressure. Think of a time you froze. Not because you weren't capable, but because the moment caught you off guard. That jolt? That's the brain's natural safety protocol. But safety doesn't mean stay small. It means learn to breathe inside the moment. Bring it into muscle memory. You can do that. You must do that. Because life won't wait for your perfect conditions. It will keep offering you chances to train. Through tension, through exposure, through choice. And this is where the shift begins. You stop seeing fear as a personal flaw, and start seeing it as a skill gap. Something that can be practiced, refined, mastered. Not through theory, through movement. Your body already knows how to do this. It knows what it feels like to survive discomfort. It knows how to settle after the wave passes. Your job is to meet it more often, with less drama, and more curiosity. Bruce trained until fear became part of the rhythm. You can too. You don't wait for fear to disappear. You train until it can't stop you. And in time, what used to feel like a wall becomes a doorway. What used to trigger panic becomes a familiar drill. What used to own you becomes part of your warm-up. Fear doesn't get smaller. You get stronger. Fear becomes personal when you start to believe it says something about you. Not your choices, not your preparation. You. That's when it grips deeper. Because now it's not just a passing feeling. It's evidence. Evidence that you're not brave, not qualified, not enough. But here's the truth Bruce Lee embodied. Identity is fluid, and fear becomes dangerous only when it hardens your sense of self into something fixed, something small. He refused to be labeled, not just in martial arts, where he shattered traditions by creating his own style, but in life. He wasn't just an actor, or just Chinese American, or just anything. And that refusal? That's where power lives. Not in what others expect of you, but in who you choose to become. You've probably felt that quiet weight. That moment when fear isn't just about failing, it's about being seen failing. When the voice in your head doesn't just say, "What if this goes wrong?" It says, "What if I am wrong?" You remember the time you hesitated, not because the action was impossible, but because it didn't fit the version of yourself you'd always upheld. Steady, quiet, careful, or maybe bold, spontaneous, always confident. Even positive identities can become prisons if they stop you from evolving. So, what now? Now, you start by challenging the identity beneath the fear. The one that says, "This is just who I am." No, it's who you've practiced being. But you can practice something else. You can practice capable. You can practice brave. Not as a performance, but as a progression. Here's a thought experiment. Close your eyes and imagine the version of you who no longer feels owned by fear, who speaks up, who tries, stumbles, and recovers with grace. Not perfect, just freer. Now ask, what would that version do in this moment that I usually avoid? Don't wait to feel like them. Act like them. Behavior leads identity, not the other way around. Think about Bruce again. He didn't wait for the world to accept his presence. He showed up anyway. He created his own form, taught in his own language, took roles no one had offered before, and made space for others to follow. He wasn't fearless. He was fluid. You can be too. Here's a small but powerful exercise. Write down 3 words you want to embody, even if they feel far away. Words like grounded, resilient, bold, Then, ask yourself at the start of each day, what is one action, one choice, that person would make today? Just one. Do that, and repeat. That's how identity shifts, not by grand reinvention, but by consistent realignment. Fear wants you to believe you're fixed, that who you've been is who you must remain. But that's a lie. Bruce didn't evolve by staying safe. He evolved by acting beyond the image others held of him, and more importantly, the image he once held of himself. So when the fear of being exposed rises up, you don't shrink. You remember, fear is a mirror, not of your weakness, but of your edge, the place where who you are meets who you could become. You don't need to be fearless to grow. You need to stop believing that fear defines you, because it doesn't. It reflects a moment, not your nature. And the more you act from the identity you're becoming, the quieter fear becomes. Not because it disappears, but because it's no longer the only voice you listen to. That's the shift. From I can't because I'm scared, to I move even though I'm scared, because this is who I'm learning to be. You think of mastery as perfection. No fear, no hesitation, just smooth execution, effortless calm. But that's a myth. Real mastery isn't absence, it's relationship. With your thoughts, your breath, your body, and yes, with fear. Bruce Lee knew that. In the blur of combat, he wasn't chasing stillness by pausing the fight. He found stillness inside it. He moved with full presence, not just technique. That's why he didn't flinch. Not because he was numb, but because he was here. And so are you. Right now, in this moment, you feel the edge of something again. Not danger, just discomfort. A flutter, a squeeze in the ribs. That old friend, fear, saying, "Are you sure?" But instead of flinching, you pause, you breathe, you let it pass through you, not into you. This is presence, the space between reaction and response, the power of noticing before obeying. And the truth is, the more you try to fight fear, the louder it gets. But when you become still, not frozen, but anchored, you shift its power. Think of a time recently when fear rushed in. Maybe it hijacked your thoughts, sped up your speech, tightened your chest. You probably reacted fast, talked too much, hesitated too long, said yes when you meant no. Now imagine you had taken 5 seconds to breathe, just 5, to notice your feet on the ground, the air in your lungs, the fact that, despite the story your brain was spinning, you were still safe, still whole. That's what Bruce meant when he said, calm mind brings inner strength. Because calm isn't laziness, it's power without panic. Try this. The next time fear shows up, and it will, use a single phrase. This is a moment. That's it. Not a threat, not a prediction, just a moment. You reduce its size. And when something is small enough to hold, it's small enough to move with. You start to see fear not as a wall, but as a wave. Something that rises, crests, and falls. Your job isn't to stop the wave, it's to surf it. Stay on your board, breathe, move with it. This is how mastery feels, not like control, but cooperation. Your mind, your breath, your presence, all working together, not silencing fear, integrating it. Because the final misunderstanding is this, that fear ever truly leaves. It doesn't. It evolves, just like you. At each new level of growth, it shapeshifts. From what if I fail to what if I succeed and still feel lost? From what will they think of me to what will I think of myself if I don't try? The questions never vanish, but your ability to be still inside them, that's where freedom begins. And it's subtle. Sometimes it's just a moment. One inhale longer than your impulse. One glance away from the panic spiral. One hand on your heart reminding you, I can be afraid and grounded. I can move forward and feel unsure. Bruce Lee's mastery wasn't loud. It was focused, present, built on a deep trust that his preparation, his awareness, and his adaptability would carry him, moment to moment. That's yours too, if you keep choosing it. So the next time fear arrives, don't steel yourself against it. Let it come. Notice, breathe, move through, with stillness inside the motion. Not because you have to be fearless, but because you've trained to move anyway. So here you are, not at the end, but at another beginning. One where fear doesn't vanish, it softens. You don't need all the answers, just the willingness to meet the next moment with breath, curiosity, and movement. Bruce Lee didn't master fear by eliminating it. He mastered himself through it. And now, so can you. Let your path be imperfect. Let your steps be uneven. But let them be yours. You're not late. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be to begin again, with awareness, with courage, with grace.